guys, and welcome back to another support therapy group. And today we're going to be doing the nervous system, something along those lines. I haven't got long, I've only got an hour, so I've tried to do what I can tonight, but I've been under the time restraints because of a work commitment. Hello. So hello Twitter. We've got Twitter as well as YouTube. I'm going to go off Twitter soon. So if you can follow us onto YouTube to watch the live program, then do. I also want to let you know, guys, that I have now filmed a therapy bubble that goes through the contract, the statement of intent for the group therapy. So I'm not going to do it now in session because it takes up a good 20 minutes to half an hour, and so I've recorded it. So I'm going to ask everyone to watch that at their leisure, and the regulars will know it anyway because we've gone through it, like this will be the 11th time, so you probably know it off by heart. So I thought I'd do that, and then we can concentrate on what we're going to be doing in sessions instead of spending all the time on something else. So today, the nervous system, and I've been reading this book called The Invisible Lion by Benjamin, I want to say Benjamin Fry, but I don't think that's right, Benjamin something. And it's a really good book. I can't recommend it enough. I would ask everyone to give it a read. It really talks about the nervous system and neuroscience in a really digestible way, really simple, digestible way. And also the diagrams are really easy to replicate, so you can explain it to someone else. So it basically talks about how you can make your system safer so that you can sort of release all of your stored up energy. And if you understand with the nervous system that if you think about your brain in 3 levels, and we've had a lot of, we used to be other things before we were human, sentient, thinking peoples that could push down our feelings and ignore stuff. So we have this top brain, this prefrontal cortex, human thinking brain that kind of gets in the way of our body's responses, and sometimes it can make us store up really bad energy over a long period of time that ends up coming out in all sorts of experiences and different places that it's not really needed. So you can be triggered, you can overreact or underreact. So if you think about your human brain is telling you logically how to do things, but we also have a mammal brain and a reptile brain in our amygdalas. So that's our fight or flight response or our freeze or flop response. So depending on how in threat our body feels, depends on which one goes online. So it will either get ready to fight or flight, and it will flood it with adrenaline, and it will reduce the vagal nerve, so it takes it away from the stomach. We're not digesting food, we're getting ready to fight or run, you know, and it'll do all these different chemical changes in your body to get you ready to deal with this threat. Now, if your body goes, there's no way we can outrun this person or outfight this person or outtalk them, then our reptilian brain will come in place, and it'll say, let's just pretend we're dead. And it's not a conscious thought, it's an overriding of your amygdala. So I have complex PTSD, and when it events after a trigger, my reptilian brain will override my mammal or my human brain. And really my human brain, the last thing I think at that moment is, oh, for God's sake, I haven't got time for this. But my reptilian brain will go, threat, and I will faint and have a seizure because it's telling me to do a freeze response, flop out, pretend you're dead, and hopefully the threat will pass and we'll be able to get on with our life. So my brain is so dysregulated that the reptilian part of it quite regularly overrides all thinking and all fight or flight ability. And I've got a lot of fight or flight ability now, so it's really frustrating that my reptile brain keeps overriding all of this skill I've gained. But that's because my trauma was infantile based. So really, when you're an infant, you are a reptile basically, because you have no skill, you have no fight or flight, you have no ability, you're absolutely vulnerable to the outside world and everyone in it. So it's quite sort of understandable that my brain severely overreacts because it's stuck in an infant state of fight or threat or flop and freeze. So every time I get to that point when my brain gets triggered, it doesn't care what's triggered it, it's going to do its thing. So we've got to think of the brain in those terms and also locate when your trauma happens, because we want to soothe this. And soothing needs to look different for different age experiences. So if you're an adult who's just had an adverse experience through a car crash, or you've had someone die badly, in a long cancer drawn out thing that was really traumatic, all death is traumatic, but there's different levels of it. Or you've been to war and you've got some real PTSD, adult trauma, then you can meet that in an adult way. It's going to heal you. And even though your body might be fight or flighting or freezing and flopping, it will be able to be soothed with adult things because it's an adult fully formed brain. If, on the other hand, you've had this adult experience that could have triggered a whole freezing episode from your childhood, and now you don't have just an adult, you've got this awake child part too, then you might need to do adult soothing as well as baby soothing. And it feels weird and it feels stupid, but actually you've got to think about what part of your brain you're trying to soothe, and you're trying to create a portal for that to soothe into. So if you think back to where your traumas happened, if it was in a teenage point, your soothing might be about boundaries and about communication and about going off and doing something frivolous. If it's infancy, it might be about having an adult dummy or a blankie, or sitting on someone's lap and just having a cry and a cuddle. No fixing, no sorting, just letting it out in a safe way. So be clever with how you do soothing. And we want to start giving that body, your nervous system, the right to say, oh, we've got a nervous system dysregulation, deregulation, and we need to soothe that. The other thing to do is to make sure that you're doing a brain, like a systems on and off switch daily. So you're reminding your body that we're doing this new thing. A really easy way to do that is neuroplasticity, a neuroscience-based type thing. And you would do some kind of skill that turns your brain on and off. Really good ones are learning a new language, learning a new skill like driving a car, flying a plane, learning how to play an instrument, all sorts of using your non-dominant hand. But you have to do it consecutively for 21 days to make a habit, but 63 days to break a habit. So really, I would always recommend someone to do their neuroplasticity for at least 63 days, because you'll get much more out of it. What's the point of getting halfway there and then stopping when you could do the other half and get double up your rewards. So I want you to try some kind of neuroplasticity, switching on and off the brain. The one that I use is emotional freedom technique. It's called tapping, and it takes a sentence around your nerve endings of your body, and then you do which is called the neurological break, where you do something with your eyes and you bring on your hearing reflex, so that it takes it from the amygdala and brings it to the prefrontal cortex, and then you take down the other side of the body with the sentence remaining. But it just gives your brain that ability to know that it's doing something different. And we're going to start this training of it. The other things that you can do is notify how you stress. So everyone has a different way of stressing. It will be under-exercising, over-exercising, overeating, under-eating, oversleeping, under-sleeping, anxiety, depression, intrusive thoughts, that's my one. Just all sorts of things. Your body you could get really aggressive, just a way in which your body expels or presents its stress. Once you locate it, be able to communicate that. Oh, the way I show stress is this. If anyone noticed me doing that, can you just A, not take it personally, B, give me a bit of slack and offer some support. The way that you could support me is this, this, and this. Because we've all been in a situation where someone's been helping us and really we just wanted to stop because they're doing anything but help us. And they're doing it in a very loving way and we're so thankful, but stop, because it's not helping at all. So we want to be able to be communicative and know what our stresses are and how they can be helped. So with mine being intrusive thinking, my first port of call is to notice, oh, I'm intrusive thinking. To second, not take any notice of what thoughts I'm having because they're just a stressor. I wouldn't take notice and try and understand my stomach, what it's telling me. I'll just go, oh, I've got a stomachache. So the same thing with your stress release. Don't try and get it, just know that it's a stress release and soothe it. So I have to tell people that I'm having intrusive thoughts. I have to name them, state them. This is the intrusive thought I'm having, so it decharges it, so I'm not scared of it anymore. It's not building up into a big thing. And then I soothe my body and locate what is causing the stress. So I say, oh, intrusive thinking is around. What is causing the stress? So I can locate it and reduce the stress because it might need a process in place or a trigger plan or a get out clause or a little bit of preparation or a code word, whatever it is that makes your body go, right, we've got a plan for that now, I can stop stressing about it. So understand how your stress emotes, understand how to soothe your stress, and be able to communicate that to others. So that's going to get our nervous systems in our thoughts. It's not unattached from our brain. It starts at the base of our brain and goes throughout our entire body. If you ignore it, freeze or flop, then it stores up. If you're fighting and flighting, you're releasing some of that energy. But if you're freezing, you're going into your reptile brain and you're just storing up and getting more and more baggage to drag around with you. And then any time that there is a little trigger or something is similar or the stress just builds to a level that creates expel, you will overreact or further underreact. So you will get to the point where your stress builds to the point of fight or flight, and then you'll really let someone have it when they didn't deserve it, because this is all your stuff. Remember, this is your nervous system that has been so stored up that it's able to lash out at people. Or it will start a new holding in, a freezing response to then store even more. So we've got to know which way our body responds so that we know how to deal with it. So when you get to the point where you understand what your body does and how much frozen energy you have and where it was placed in your lifetime and how to soothe it and what soothing looks like and how to dialogue that to other and also boundary it, you can then start creating an environment that makes difference. And then your brain will start doing what you need. Now, if you think about like a lion catching a gazelle or any animal, even like a rabbit trying to cross the road, and in the moment, the animal that can't win usually freezes or flops. They play dead, and after the threat has passed, the car is gone now, or the lion got distracted and walked away, the rabbit or the gazelle will then have a moment. The rabbit will probably do loads of shaking to let out that fearful, oh my God, I'm going to die, because actually it froze and it wasn't a thinking thought, it was an amygdala reaction that when it comes back to life, it's in the moment of the car's going to hit me, not the car's gone past and we're safe. And that thawing out of the freeze response can only happen once the body is safe again. So it comes out and looks as if someone's overreacting because it happens way after. Sometimes people who are supporting someone in cancer and they don't die and they're over it and everything's good. And then the person who's been supporting goes through an absolute grief and fear and uncontrollable crying and uncontrollable what ifs and all of this stress. And everyone's like, what? It's over. Why are you, what's going on? Well, it's because they froze. And now that it's over because it's safe, their body goes, oh, we're safe again. But the body doesn't know that it's safe. It just knows it's safe enough that it's not, that it can unfreeze. But when it does unfreeze, it's in the moment of fear and stress. So the gazelle, when the lion goes off, when it wakes up, it's not just going to go, oh, I'm safe, the lion's gone, I'm going to go and have a drink. It's going to start running like mad and kicking its legs out because it thinks the lion's going to come and grab it. And then gradually it's going to realise that the lion's not there and, oh, what am I doing? And all the other gazelles watching it do this whole thing. I just like, what's happening to it? And they're ignoring it because everything's safe. So when you're safe, that's when you might emote, and it might not make any sense other than to the nervous system. It's going to make zero sense to the prefrontal cortex, your human thinking brain. It's going to make not a lot of sense to your mammal brain because the fight and flight is over. Why are you still running and trying to fight? And your reptile brain, it's going to make no sense to at all because it's going to have frozen and then thaw out in a moment that doesn't look the same anymore, that has all the same energy inside you. Now, humans can override that by, oh, they've become conscious now and they're not frozen anymore, and now they're going to lock up, hold in, and refreeze in a different way. So it stores up the energy. So a lot of people with PTSD, I'm one of them, will get a lot of shakes, the body will vibrate. They'll get a lot of sweating, they'll get a lot of visceral body reactions because your body is trying to let out the threat that it froze with. So in thinking it like that, it would make all sense that once mum isn't dying from cancer and she's totally better and going back to work, that daughter or son or husband would have an absolute grief outpouring threat, and everyone else won't be able to understand because it's gone. But that body needs to thaw out of freezing because during the time of the cancer, my wife or my mum is having the cancer, I've got to get on. So they keep holding in and freezing their response because we've got to get on, and they're the person that needs the care. So we keep freezing ourselves. So we want to give permission to say that it's the exact right time for all this emotion to start thawing out of us at the point of safety. That's when it's meant to happen. And because our thinking brains are so clever, but they've only been around for a very short amount of time. Our reptilian brains are archaic. They're like dinosaurs. And our mammal brains are pretty fucking old. But our human brain is very young, really. But that's the one we think, that's the only one we take any notice of. When really, if we understood a bit of the other two and the nervous system connected to it, we might be able to navigate it easier and also soothe it and bring it back to a less alert state. So you've got two things going on. One, when you're in hyper alert and your amygdala is kicking in because we're under threat, and that will be your fight or flight usually, or friend. A lot of children use friend before they use flop or freeze. And that will be a real triggering event because you're getting ready for something. And if you're able to expel that energy, then you won't store it. But if you're one to hold in, and your brain also does that too, then you could be storing up a whole load of negative energy and threat energy that never has the permission to expel, because every time you get safe, you're not allowed to now, we're safe, don't be silly. So you start another holding in threat response, because now you're under threat of your embarrassed brain or your don't be silly brain or whatever. So you've got to understand how you talk to your threat, that you can be different with it, and how your threat does respond, because you can't change how you respond. It's in your genetics, and also your historic, especially if your historic has had childhood or infantile trauma, because then your neuroplasticity hasn't just got what it was born with, it's got what's been made. So if you have ongoing trauma and abuse or neglect, or not belonging and no attachment and love, then your brain is going to learn to be different. It's not going to be itself so much. It really does affect your Mahikam of self, how you become self. It affects your amygdala and the nervous system. It affects lots of different systems in your body, systemic systems. So thinking about it in those terms allows you to meet it better and gives it rights and gives it more explanation of what it is and how to tell others about it. So it's much easier to say to someone that oh, this is me, not you. I have a nervous system thing from a childhood that I'm working on it. Thanks. If you want to help, you can do this, this, and this, or just ignore when I'm doing this because it's just me working on something. So it takes out the charge and it gives you the opportunity to do this work when rested, when in a safety zone. And that's usually when it will come out, and it will surprise you. And because it surprises you, you're shot back down again. So you're in this constant, perpetual motion of reptile reaction. It's not even mammal reaction, it's reptile reaction because you're freezing. So I want you to think about it in those terms and come to a good knowledge of it, a good understanding of it, one that you could actively explain to someone else, or read the books. Really, I'm dyslexic, and my main dyslexic trait is in reading and reading to comprehend. So I find it very difficult to read something and then know what I've read. Like I get to the end of the page and I don't know what that was about at all. And I've understood it, so you're gonna love it. Like, so it's the best book I've read on neuroscience and methodology, and they're real hard work. But I'm so interested in it. It's above my pay grade, really. But I keep pushing because it's so interesting. And once you understand neuroscience, it makes you navigate all sorts of things much easier because you don't take nowhere near as much personally, and you're able to communicate it to someone else, so they're able to meet you in your nervous system. So you can have people that are constantly triggering each other because of the way their nervous system responds. So if yours is a mammal and it fights or flight, so it will give something back and usually overgive, it will react, then you're expelling a lot of energy. And if you're with someone that also is a fight or flight and they expel that energy, then you could get into some real doozies of fights because all of this energy is coming out. If you have someone who's an expeller and someone who's a reptilian holder in a freezer, then it could feel like under attack all the time. Or why does this person not care? Oh, look, I'm just trying all the fucking time and they just won't give me anything back. Or you could have two freeze responses where you really have not a lot of connection at all, because you're both freezing out of that work and probably making your own internal minds up of what the other is doing, usually around the point of they don't care about you, when actually we're both human beings with a reptilian amygdala response. And once you know that, you can go, oh God, that makes sense of all these other things. And then you can future-proof your life because you now have this tool of understanding, especially in dynamics. So when there's two people or a family and there's lots of different amygdalas that all work differently, once you understand them, it's much easier to function as a group because each individual is respected and not taken personally. It's much easier to see once you have that dialogue. Oh, darling, you're doing that thing when you're stressed. What's going on? Can I help in any way? Rather than, oh, he's coming like that. Well, I don't, blah, blah, blah. And you start this whole thing because maybe you have amygdalas that don't understand each other. So I want you to think along all those lines of how you react, how you respond, what your soothing mechanisms are. I like to offer my clients, they're these plain dice, and you can get a Sharpie pen and write your 6 best soothing mechanisms and then roll the dice, and it gives you a fun way of working with self and working with soothing and soothing your midfield brain. So what else? The I thought someone talked to me on Twitter, but I think I've swiped them away. So sorry if you said something and I can't respond. I don't know quite how to work that way. I'm a little bit of a Luddite where computers are concerned. But I do have my new, what's it called, camera for the webcam. So we'll see whether it's any better than the computer, which was fading out quite a lot. I had someone feedback to me. So I've done something new and we've made it work. So in terms of the nervous system and coming to terms with it, giving it a break and a free pass and allowing it to be its own right, and really not taking it personally how it reacts and responds and emotes, and accept whether you have a mammal or a reptilian brain, and start being able to be with that, and then look at how that brain would like soothing, and then also go on the timeline to see in what eras it needs soothing and what that soothing looks like in each era. So in infancy, in childhood, in teenagerhood, in young adult, and in now adult functioning self, depending on how old you are. And so get to real terms with it and be able to give yourself a little bit more knowledge on how to interact with other people. And if you have 2 people who are going through a nervous system experience, trigger, trauma, reaction, it really helps because you then know your dynamic and how you can trigger each other and how to navigate each other or create the boundaries so that you contain self. Oh, I'm one that will flop and freeze, so don't take that person out. It just means my brain has gotten overridden and I just need a cup of tea and stop, and we can pick up this conversation again tomorrow. And if it is a fight or flight mammal brain, usually the mammal person won't notice because they're in the overreaction part of it, so they can't really feel themselves. But another person can say, "Oh, I think your amygdala's kicked in," or "I think your mammal part's coming out because I'm noticing that you're getting louder and angry and this, that, and the other. What can we do to get you back to yourself?" And then we'll talk about this later. Because there's no point in having discussion and navigation and process when you're in a flight or fight response. You cannot think anymore. You cannot override the back of your brain until you've soothed it in some way. And you don't soothe it by talking to it and telling it to stop being silly, or by someone else doing it even less. If someone else tells you to calm down, your brain is going to get a little bit less calm because don't fucking tell me to calm down. Your brain feels like it's having the exact right reaction right now. But it's up to us to educate it that actually, no, we're into overreacting. Sorry, it's not our fault, it's not the brain's fault, it's no one's fault. It's just the nervous system that has stored up a whole load of energy that every time it has any little thing, it will give you a whole ton because that's a bit more. So giving it that permission to be how it is, to be vulnerable, to be just little creatures. You're not even human. You can't think straight. You can't be clever and logical and educated. You can be mammal or reptile. And if you're mammal and reptile with an infantile trauma, then you're baby too. So what are those three going to do? Nothing. You've got to recognize that they're there, make them safe, and then they will work for you. And while they're in unsafety, they're not going to work for you at all. They're just going to. So we're going to try and create soothing and be really creative with it. So it might be going and swinging on the swing just by yourself, and just that forward and backward motion will lull your brain into a time where all it had to worry about was more swinging. I want an ice cream now. If you had a wonderful childhood. And if you didn't, then we can remake those historic memories now, as long as we visit them through a portal. So we're not asking an infantile brain to read something and get clever about it. We're going to reproduce a childhood memory in a childhood way, but it just happens to be in an adult body. All the rest of it is child, just the body isn't. And if you think about it in that way, then you're more able to meet your archaic traumas, your historic stuff, and you're more able to soothe it and actually reduce your amygdala response and its hyper alertness. Because when you're under hyper alert, you're not yourself. You're an animal state. So you're less thinking, you're less logical, you're less educated. And that makes sense, because if you ever watch something where you see someone just behaving so not themselves, like they're just behaving like an animal, they're swearing, they've got no words, they're like, God, who is this person? And it's because they're in their fight or flight, but they have no brain to work with, so they lose all of their speech and their logic and their ability to form sentence. They're just trying to get their words out with a whole ton of this, and half of them are swear words because they can't think of the word because something else has taken over. So we want that to be known. And as soon as it's coming out, we go, oh, look, I can't expect any sense from you right now. You're being triggered. And if usually when you're in a dynamic, one of you is less triggered than the other. So one of you is always usually able to go, oh, wait there, we're doing that thing. Oh, wait there, I've noticed you're here, and I'll probably join you if we carry on. Let's stop this for now. And recognizing and holding on and giving permission to say that we don't get anything sorted when we're out of our brain, we're in our amygdala. We can't expect sense and logic and education from an animal or a reptile. That's really not fair. You wouldn't expect a baby to sort the day out for you. You wouldn't expect your dog to get your taxes done. So we've got to stop expecting these little poor creatures to get better. They cannot. All we can do is hold them in a betterness so that they are less reactive, less held in so that they over explode or implode. That's the other thing that people can do, especially freezers. They will end up having a nervous breakdown or a psychological breakdown or a physical breakdown because they've held in to the point where their body doesn't just override them and do a holding in, it overrides and says, I can't hold in anymore, so your body's not yours anymore. And so if you get to that stage, then your body really is being held in the most awful environment. And that's really unfair to then expect it to put projection and what's the word, duty upon it, demand upon it. That's really unfair. So we want to think about self as real baby, infant, animal, and how we would treat an animal, how kindly, and we wouldn't expect them to, we wouldn't try and talk them because they can't understand language. They don't know what you're saying. So we want to get away from that and into more physical things that help. Now, if you had a great childhood and you're having an adult adverse experience or trauma, then it may well be that you can do a lot more talk soothing, and that can create a reducing of your hyper alert. And it's a really good way of soothing. And a lot of adults with no childhood trauma find reading really soothing. So if that's the case, then it might be that talking is a really good way of soothing the brain. But if you've had a lot of childhood trauma and a lot of holding and a lot of historic nervous system energy storing up, then it's almost impossible for you to talk to it or talk your way out of it. You have to be much more clever and soothe the body physically, or hello everyone. I don't think there is anyone there. Right, so I have. Where was I up to? I've only got till 7:30, so I'm doing an hour tonight. I think in fact, I'm going to tell Twitter we're on YouTube now, so come over to us, and I'm going to close this down. Bye. Okay. So, the people here, welcome, and thanks for joining us. Have we got any questions or anything that you want to offer up as you know, something that wants unpacking, so we can take it through the nervous system or anything? If not, I shall carry on with my own thread. No? Okay. So, what shall I do now? Once you've got your skills on soothing and you're doing them on a daily basis and you're some way into your 63 days, the first 21 days you really are just working on trying to remember the new habits, and you mustn't judge yourself on how it's working, because it won't be working at all at that point. It will just be creating a mechanism. So that's all that happens in the first 21 days. And some people can give up because they think, oh, nothing's happening. And they like put all that energy into nothing. But you must hold your nerve, because it doesn't look how you would expect. Turning on and off the computer, you wouldn't realize all the motions that go on inside the computer and how that makes its function once it's switched back on much more accessible and much more free flowing. So just take it as a vitamin, your neuroscience work, your neuroplasticity work, and then forget about it. And also forget about it in terms of that first 21 days, because all we're doing is noticing same. And once we notice the same, we're just trying to give it something different. And difference can be any old shit, any old thing. It doesn't really matter as long as it's not same. So you could stuff a cake in your mouth, you could go for a bath, you could go for a run, you could have a wank, you could read a book, you could phone a friend, you could watch a film, you could do some tapping, you could do all sorts of things. The other thing in terms of the stress response, which is a slightly different thing, so you're noticing your stress response, you can't change it, it's always going to look the same. And that's a bit of a bad habit that people can get into, where they're in a cycle of failure, because, oh, here's my stress back, when actually you want to be able to respond to them, so they are worth being a flag. And our human brain and society in the way that we're raised encourages us to ignore, to push down, to hold in. So you being able to note those stresses and notice them might be quite difficult. So once you know what your stress is, stop judging it. Oh, this is how I stress. How do you stress? Oh, now we both know how we stress. We can dodge that much more easily. And once you know what your stress is, you can then soothe it more easily, as well as knowing when it began, what era it began in, because it's, as I say, it's hard to get a stress to soothe if you're giving it the wrong medicine. You're giving it an adult dose of medicine instead of a childhood dose of medicine. If you're giving it a human-based dose instead of a reptile-based dose. If you're expecting a mammal to react like a reptile. If you're giving yourself a whole new story because that person's doing that, so it must mean this, then you're into fiction again. And we want to keep it to fact, and fact that's unjudged, that is that's cared for, that is looked after, that has communication and soothing, its own unique bit of soothing, and everyone's will be different. So if it's things like anxiety, which is one of the easiest psychological things to treat, because you can just treat it with neuroplasticity. It's really easy to shift it into a more well-being place, so that you just go, oh, I'm feeling anxious. What's made me anxious? And let me just look after that, instead of having an anxiety you ignore that then builds and then becomes so big it's an actual threat, and then your amygdala kicks in and it makes it all worse, and it becomes this mountain out of a molehill. And actually a lot of people can have, actually, rather than anxiety, that what they really have is catastrophization. And they start off with this really bad habit, this thinking habit, where what the brain is probably trying to do is prepare, but actually what it is doing is overwhelming it with all the worries and all the what ifs and all the things that could happen, when actually none of them are probably going to happen. And you're actually using all of this energy up that you could be doing other things with on all these things that haven't happened, that aren't even facts. They're fiction. And quite often they're really bizarre fiction, because once your brain gets going and starts giving you a scenario and starts catastrophizing it, it can become all sorts of scary stuff, and then your amygdala really will kick in, or let out, kick in or kick out. So giving it some specific soothing-based techniques. So anxiety could use the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 or the 6-inch 12-foot stare, where you're bringing on a different part of your brain that allows the amygdala to soothe. If you're a stressor, where you get really lethargic and depressed and sort of stationary, it might be that rather than, right, I'm going to start going to the gym, I'm going to walk every day, it'd be that every time you notice that feeling, you do 20 star jumps, 20 squats, and 20 push-ups, to just meet that lethargy with a moment of opposite. If you tend to undereat, and when you're stressed, you're going to know that you undereat, and you're going to make sure that you make 4 little snacks and set your timer, so that you carry on giving your body what it needs. Just because it's stressed, it still needs to be looked after. If you have depression as your stress, it might be giving it a safe space, to creating a moment where you have safety to let out your emotional sadness and overwhelm. And then give it the opposite, something different, where you take it to the beach and get an ice cream. And it's not that you're going to fix it, you're going to make it better. It's that in this moment right now, you're going to soothe it. You're going to give it something that just feels different. And that's going to teach it a new mechanism. Now, when I'm doing a chiropody, I'm a chiropodist podiatrist as well. And when I'm doing chiropody, I'll be treating either an ingrown toenail or a corn or calloused heels and fissures and things. And when you first start, you have to pare away all the dead. And that's just sort of wasted work, because that all should have just shed itself as it came to the surface, but it doesn't. It gets stored up. So first I've got to manually shed all that skin. But then the skin is in a habit of overproducing, overreacting, because it's always had this pressure and all this skin, and the skin goes, oh, more skin, I best heal myself from it. So it starts healing itself from itself with the same action. So we've got to take it away and teach the skin that it doesn't need to overreact like this. And that will be in a daily quick buff, so that we're teaching the skin to shed that top layer. This is what you do. You're meant to shed yourself. Look, this is how you do it. And for the first 21 days, it will completely forget how to shed its skin. But after doing 21 days of reminding it, after having taken back all the debt and the backlog, it will then remember, oh yeah, when we get to the surface, we're meant to shed. Right, I'm back with you. I'm in the room again, don't worry, I'm back on the tee. And then it will start functioning normally again. So that's the way we've got to think about the nervous system. That number one, we've got to get rid of the backlog. We've got to prepare out all of the hard skin, get rid of the ingrown toenail, get rid of the corn. Then we've got to teach it to daily soothe, to daily shed this stress. And then the skin will learn to function in a well-functioning way, in a configured way of itself, rather than an against itself configuration. So I want you to really think about how you can train your body, how you can get rid of that backlog, and how you can recognize who and where you are in terms of your nervous system and your amygdala triggers and how they stress. So again, we're not changing anything. I am forever going to be an intrusive thinker. But now it's, oh, look, I'm intrusive thinking. God, I had a really weird one, Simon, my husband. It was all about this, that, and the other. Oh, it's probably because I've got this coming up. Right, now I know. I'm going to make sure that's a bit safer. I'm going to let you know any more intrusive thinking I have. And we'll probably say no to that thing at the weekend so that we can relax. So I always have intrusive thinking. It's very rarely here now because I hardly ever get stressed, and I've got a fairly well-regulated nervous system yet. But I also will always have a reptilian brain because my infantile trauma can't change because it's infantile, it's brain structure. So I will always have a tendency to freeze and store up bad energy and deregulate my nervous system. So as long as I know that, oh, that's all right. If I just have to do this, this, and this, and make sure I don't do that and that, and create this boundary and that safety and this bit of communication, well, it's okay. So giving your body the rights for it to have what it has, its own stressor, its own amygdala, and its own historic, you're then navigating your life without having changed those things. You're just in difference with them. And it gives you a much easier journey of life, basically, because you're actually in your body. And not just in your human body, you're in your archaic body, which is your nervous system. Your body keeps score. And if you're not allowed to release, then it's just storing that score up. And then just finding ways to leak it out, because there's only so much one body can hold and hold in. And at some point, it's going to end up reacting or underreacting, constricting, so it blocks out. So think about how you are, who you are, where you're from, and accommodate and accept those things that you cannot change. We're not changing anything, we can't make anything different. How do we meet it differently? How do we give that a better home? How do we give that a bit more safety? How do we not take it personally that I'm missing you with that? What are we doing all that time? Because, oh, we're just humans and that's okay. And it makes sense of a lot of things that have historically happened once you know. And it's the same because in me and my husband, before my nervous system broke down, because I stored for a really long time, I was really good at fight or flight for a very long time because my body was so frozen that it didn't really feel itself. And then one day, the stress built up so much that the true part of my brain which is my fight or flight system, which is my reptilian response, which is the flop or freeze, kicked in, and now it's overwhelmed everything. But being able to meet it in a childhood neuroscience-based way, as well as this is how it looks and it cannot change. Sorry guys, you're going to have to do this, that and the other. And if you can't, that's okay. We don't have to be friends. It gives you a lot of ability to sort the chaff out from the roots. And it might include some family, because not all family are empathic, perspective seeing, loving, giving people. Some are, they've got a comorbid condition where they have a amygdala response, a stress response, some history, and a bit of narcissist or psychopathy or sociopathy. So all these things they didn't ask for, it's just the way it is, and now their poor little body is just trying to make sense of it and affecting even further who they are. And sometimes if the narcissist gets to a point where they have shrunk their personage down to a point where they can deal with, and then they've blocked everyone else from being able to touch that, and they have created a pedestal in which they keep themselves safe. That's a very isolating place, and can be very triggering for other people, and it can be very take because I have the rights now, but actually it doesn't create well-being and belonging and true safety where they can relax into it. It's a constant search for more and mine and rights and all those sort of things. So remember that some people have more to work on than they can possibly even manage, and if they're not going to counselling, they haven't got that external support. It's not up to you to do that for them. So if they're not capable, you're allowed to say, I'm just going to leave you in this moment or this place. I am growing and I am elevating and I am getting on and I am making changes and differences that you're struggling with, but it's not going to stop you from doing that. I have to continue with this journey, but I accept that you need to stay here and we might leave each other behind. And being able to meet it like that allows everyone to be vulnerable, because some people are stuck and they need to stay stuck because that's their safe space, and if they move 1 centimetre it will all fall down. And they have created a safety that is narcissism, that says I hold myself safe and number one, and that's how I keep this amygdala running, and they're just putting off their breakdown for some time later. They have every right to do that, but you have every right to get beyond your own nervous system and create a safety for yourself, and leave them behind if they want to stay stuck. So my work commitment is going to start soon. I've got 5 minutes to shut down before the doorbell goes probably. So I'm going to summarize for you and get you working on your nervous system. And if you think about your nervous system as a minor attractive person and how much hatred you get and how much you put yourself out there into getting hatred or to working with hatred or to doing the whole social media thing, but also beyond that, you're holding in a very vulnerable part of yourself from everyone. So there's a lot of baggage forming, there's a lot of nervous system backlog going. And if you don't have the safety of going to talk through that with someone because they're going to dox you or not like it or refer you on or tell someone about it because you're minor attractive because they think they have an obligation to do that, which is actually incorrect. There's very specific things that have to be in place before you have an obligation to alert anyone, and people that oh, right, I've got to go, sorry. So see you later, thanks for coming, bye.